This What's Working with Cam Marston podcast is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stellas. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is the show designed to bring you the trends shaping the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace around you. We find people who can speak intelligently about the trends shaping their businesses, how they react to those trends, with the hopes that something they've said or something they've done in their business will help you and me get a little bit better at whatever it is that we do. And that's definitely what we got for you today. However, prior to getting into the content today, I want to tell you a little bit about the show. And that is, the show continues to do well, and I want to thank the listeners for that. We have new advertisers coming on who have seen the benefit of the audience that we've collected over the years here. We have advertisers that have returned because they feel like they really, really want their brand in front of this audience that we've been growing for the past several years. We have new people coming online. You're going to hear new things on the show. The show has been picked up as a radio program for a second broadcast. It broadcasts at Wednesday at 6 p.m. on FM Talk 106.5 in Mobile, and now it's broadcast a second time on FM Talk 106.5 at 2 p.m. on Saturdays. All signs that this show continues to grow. And I say that to thank you. Thank you very much. I love doing this, and you've enabled me to do it. Thank you very much. Amy Morin. Amy Morin is the guest. I'll have her on after this first commercial break. But I'm going to give you a little bit about her background so that we can quickly dive into the content when I get her on the line. Amy is a licensed clinical social worker, college psychology instructor, and psychotherapist. And that's all of her bio I'm going to read for right now. She had a series of devastating events impact her, I guess it was 8 or 10 years ago. And she had to call on her own training as a clinical psychotherapist, as a social worker, to get herself through this. She experienced some devastating blows, but had to get herself through this. In other words, doctor, heal thyself. And what she did in the process was write a blog, and that blog was 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. And when she posted this blog, much to her surprise, it exploded, and people began to reach out for her for more information. Book companies came to her and said, "You need to write this book," and she thought they were kidding. In other words, she wrote something, tapped into something that the population was in desperate need of. And today her books have sold millions. She's on tour giving speeches, as much as you can to her right now, talking about these 13 things. I'm holding this book here, 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. I've read it to prepare for this conversation. It's full of Post-it notes and my handwriting in the margins, etc., to cue me on things to ask Amy about. She also sent me this book, 13 Things Mentally Strong Parents Don't Do. Parents don't do. And I've read this book, and one of my questions to Amy when she comes on is there any way are my kids irreversibly damaged now? Because there are 13 chapters of things that strong parents don't do. And I think I've broken at least half of them many times. So we're going to talk about whether my kids are irreparably damaged or not. Amy is tapped into something that people want. And that is a guideline, a way of thinking. And I love the way she frames it with the negative that they don't do. We're going to talk to her about that as well. And we're going to get into some of the biggest challenges people like you and me face. Who are we? We're parents, we're business leaders, we're in the business world, whatever it may be, and ask her to comment on a mental health regimen, let's say a exercise to keep us doing the right thing. I've met her. I've talked to her. I've been excited for this one for a long time. Amy Morin will be our guest when we come back. Her book, 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do, is tearing it up. And I can't wait to hear more about it. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. We'll be right back.
At Spring Hill Toyota, it's just that easy. From our 3-day exchange to free car washes, the benefits of the Spring Hill Advantage make the choice easy to see. We make it easy to own. Every vehicle comes with Toyota Care, plus our no-cost maintenance plan with free tire rotations and oil changes for 4 years. Get peace of mind with free roadside assistance 24/7. And don't forget, it's easy to buy your car 100% online. Visit SpringHillToyota.com today. It's just that easy.
I'm David Nelson, brewmaster and owner of Braided River Brewing. We want beer that goes along no matter where the adventure takes us and that doesn't make us choose between great beer and drinkability. We're drawn to the Delta and united by beer because to us, the best way to celebrate the Delta is to slow down and savor the moments and the beer together. Come visit our tap room in downtown Mobile and ask for us at your favorite bar or restaurant. Visit online at braidedriverbrewing.com.
When you make the right decision, it feels good, like picking the perfect accent rug or choosing a good night's sleep over an all-night crime show binge. It feels really good to make the right insurance decision, too. I'm State Farm agent Allison Horner, and that's why I'm right here in Mobile to help you select the right protection at the right price. I'll make sure you understand your State Farm coverages so you'll know what to expect if the unexpected happens. With me as your State Farm agent, it's easy to make the right choice. You can come by, call, or click AllisonHorner.com. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Amy Morin is on the line. I promised you she'd be here, and here she is. She is perhaps the most famous of all the people that I've interviewed on this show because her books have been sold all over the world. I'm looking at her website. It is in the process of being translated into about 8 or 10 different languages. Her blog that I told you about in the opening comments has been read by 50 million people, which caused the book companies to reach out to her, put her on tour, etc. And I've met her, and she's as genuine as you would think based on the content about her. Amy, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to What's Working.
Thank you for having me on your show, Cam. I appreciate it.
Amy, folks, lives on a boat in the Keys, however, is speaking to us today from the hinterlands of Maine, where she and her husband are snowmobiling, and she's gotten off the snowmobile long enough to talk to us for this show. Amy, the book is just full of content. Both of the books that I'm holding in my hand are full of content, but they both have something in common, and that is you talk about the work necessary to change your way of thinking, to change your outlook on the world. I'd like to begin with you giving us a little bit more of your background and then talking about the discipline of the work needed to change your thinking.
Sure. So I'm a psychotherapist by trade. I started working as a therapist up here in rural Maine in the early 2000s. And about a year into my career, my mom passed away suddenly and unexpectedly. And by then, as a therapist, I was sort of studying the people in my therapy office because I realized that some people would come in and they had a lot of hope. They really were motivated to change. They wanted to know, how do I make my life better? But there were like this other whole group of people that would come in and they were bitter, they were angry, and they just were hoping I could somehow solve all their problems and fix them with a magic wand. And as I studied these groups of people, I figured out, well, it wasn't always about what people did. Sometimes what separated these two groups of people was more about what they didn't do. People who didn't have certain bad habits tended to bounce back faster. They were still hopeful. They went on to reach some pretty great heights of success and achievement, but they were happier, healthier. So I just, for my own needs at that moment, I really wanted to say, how do I get rid of these unhealthy habits? As I'm grieving the loss of my mom, I wanted to make sure that I became one of those people who ended up being on the more optimistic end of the spectrum. And I'm glad that I did, because 3 years to the day that my mom died, my 26-year-old husband had died of a heart attack. And again, found myself now, I don't have my mom, I don't have my husband, and I'm supposed to be a therapist who solves other people's problems. What do I do? And by then, luckily, I had learned a lot of those unhealthy habits to avoid. And as a therapist, I was trained to really point out what people are doing well and tell them to do more of that. But, I thought, well, if I went to see a physical trainer and they told me to run on the treadmill, that'd be great. But I'd also hope that they told me to quit eating all the junk food that was counterintuitive to all of those habits I had. So I just really thought I'm doing people a disservice if I don't point out what they're doing that's counterproductive. And really made my practice centering around that. Hey, if you give up this one bad habit, all those good habits you have become much more effective. Applied it to my own life, found that it worked. And then a few years down the road, my father-in-law was diagnosed with cancer. And I remember thinking like, oh, I can't go through this again. I can't grieve. I've had a broken heart for so long. And I sat down and I wrote a list of what mentally strong people don't do. And when I was done, I had a list of 13 things. And then, as you mentioned, that's the list I happened to publish online, thinking it might resonate with a few people, but 50 million people read it and it changed the course of my life. But as you say, it's not just about reading a list or reading a book and changing your life. You have to put the work in. And most of us have developed some pretty unhealthy habits over time. And getting rid of those habits requires us to first recognize them and then to figure out what do you replace them with, and then to put in the practice and to know that we're going to mess up, we're going to make mistakes, but we can still make progress and move forward if we learn from those mistakes.
So when you say work, what comes to mind for me is labor, is physical movement of if I want to work at losing weight, then there are behavioral changes that I need to do. And I'm going to boil it down and perhaps oversimplify it. If I want to lose weight, then I don't reach for the ice cream in the refrigerator or freezer. In fact, I don't reach for it in the grocery store. If I want to lose weight, I put on my running shoes and I go outside and I take a run. These are literal changes of behavior that lead me to the goal that I can identify and watch. But when we talk about mental work, there's not a behavior that immediately comes to mind when I think of that I can hold myself to accountable to doing or not doing. Talk to me about how you hold yourself accountable to something you can't see that's almost as much of a feeling as it is anything.
And you're right that when we say, like, is this person mentally strong? Sometimes we expect that we can tell just by looking at somebody, but you can recognize somebody's big biceps and tell they're physically strong, but mental strength's a little bit different. It has to do with the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you behave. So, for instance, if you're somebody that always beats yourself up, maybe you call yourself names, you speak really harshly to yourself, you then have to recognize, okay, I'm doing that, and how am I going to think differently? And sometimes it does require a behavioral change. If you sit around and just worry and you sit on the couch all the time just thinking about all the bad things that could happen, you probably need to change your behavior. Sometimes changing your behavior first shifts your mindset. So you might need to get up and say, I'm going to go call a friend. I'm going to go outside for a bit. I'm going to busy myself with a chore to distract myself. And doing that can shift the way that you think, which then affects the way that you feel. So sometimes it involves a behavior change, but not always. At other times, it's about becoming more aware of your emotions. Perhaps you always yell at somebody when you're angry, or you say things that you don't mean. So then it becomes about recognizing, okay, my temper's starting to go up. My body's physiologically reacting because I'm upset. What am I going to do in this moment? And it might mean walking away. It might mean taking a few deep breaths. So behavior change is often involved, but it's not the main thing. Sometimes that's just part of the process.
So I like to hear you say that a part of the process of changing the way we think or preventing the bad stuff can be a physical change of behavior, because I think that certainly helps me thinking about bad habits that I get into, that I could stand up and go do this instead. That would literally change my mind or get me out of these bad habits. Now, when you say, well, you're with a client and you say this is going to take some work, or changing a habit of the way you're thinking is going to take some work, and I think I know the answer to this, but I want to hear you describe it. Is that a 2-week process? Is it a 1-year process? Tell me, when you've got a typical client there and you tell them you're going to have to change this habit, you're going to have to change this way of thinking, are you thinking this should be a year? What is that process?
So it all depends for sure. Some people have spent 40 years getting into a bad habit, like they call themselves names, or they just worry so much that they struggle to function. We're not going to change that entire habit in 2 weeks, but we can start chipping away at it probably within 2 weeks. And over the course of, it depends how much time and effort people put into practicing outside of my therapy office as well. I have some people who, when they're really devoted to saying, okay, I want to address this, they're all in, they make it a top priority. They can change their habits relatively quickly. But I have other people who say, this is a problem for me, but it's not the number one priority. I've got a family. I've got a busy work life. I'm going to devote 15 minutes a week to working on this. Those people are going to take a lot longer. Just like if we talked about weight loss, if somebody doubles down, they say, I'm going to work out every day versus the person that says, I'm going to go to the gym once a week. All depends on how much time, effort, and energy you have to put into it. And that's not the only factor. For some people who have really ingrained habits, they need more coaching. They need more time in the therapy office. It's not just about putting 40 hours in practicing this at home, but they need more guidance, more coaching. And it takes a while to really undo those things. And I guess the other big factor is our environment. Somebody who is really struggling with depression or anxiety, if they live in a really difficult home situation, or they have a job where their boss doesn't treat them very well, it's going to take a lot longer than somebody who has a really supportive home life and lots of friends and family who are cheering them on. So there's lots of other factors involved. And I guess the long answer to your question is it all depends.
It all depends.
I hope that people will see progress within a couple of weeks. And then once we are able to say, well, hey, here's where you started and here's where you are now, and people see a little bit of progress, that keeps them motivated to keep going.
Well, it brings me to the first thing I highlighted in your book when you sent it to me. I was in the introduction and in the second paragraph. I'm already highlighting as I got to the second paragraph, and it's this sentence: I knew that time doesn't heal anything. It's how we deal with that time that determines the speed at which we heal. Time doesn't change anything. It's how we deal with the time that impacts the speed at which we change. Correct?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest and most harmful misconceptions out there, is that people say time heals everything. And I have people who come into my therapy office and it's been 10, 20 years since something happened to them, like they lost a loved one or they went through a difficult divorce. And they say, but I still don't feel any better. Well, it's because they sort of were just waiting. It was like they wasted 20 years just waiting to feel better, hoping that tomorrow maybe they would magically wake up and feel better, because they bought into that notion that if they just waited long enough, that they would suddenly feel better. But that's not it. You have to work on it. You have to put in effort and energy, and you have to really focus on creating that change if you want to heal.
Time does not heal all wounds. Your use of that time and your approach to it is what heals the wounds. This is Amy Morin. She's on the line with me from the hinterlands of Maine, talking about the 13 things mentally strong people don't do. When we come back, Amy, I want to ask you to pick a couple of these things that apply most to my listeners. These are business runners, leaders, supervisors, etc., across the area, and help them with one or two things that you find most common in people with leadership positions in the business world. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm David Nelson, brewmaster and owner of Braided River Brewing in downtown Mobile. We make drinkable, flavorful craft beer perfect for life on the Gulf Coast. So pick up one of our 6-packs before your next adventure, or stop by our tap room for a relaxing afternoon with friends. Follow us on social media for the latest beer releases and events, and ask for a Braided River at your favorite bars and restaurants. Thanks for your support. We look forward to sharing our beers with you.
It's Cam again with another strategic planning tip. When you begin the strategic planning process with your team, it's a good idea to write down what your age will be when the strategic plan is fulfilled. Me, I'm a fan of a 10-year planning process, so I have people write down their age in 10 years in big numbers at the top of their page. I ask them to write down who they'll be financially supporting in 10 years and who else living in their household will be earning a living in 10 years. This usually gets some chuckles, but it grounds people into reality. I then ask what they'd like their work schedule to be like. I want participants invested in the discussion and in implementing the plan once it's complete. and these tactics usually do the trick. Want help with your strategic planning? Search for Cam Marston online and drop me an email.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Now offering the purchase of the Stella Artois Chalice, a beautiful stemmed glass with the Stella logo. The purchase of each Stella Artois Chalice provides 5 years of clean water for someone in one of 13 developing countries around the world. Learn more at stellaartois.com. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
Morin is on the line with me. She gave a TED Talk that has been viewed 15 million times. Amy, do you get disappointed when you put something out there and it immediately doesn't get 10, 20 million views, hits, sales, anything like that? Your numbers are astounding in what you've done. But it's certainly the quality of the product and your delivery. I think it's also it speaks to the need for the content which you're delivering out there. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think when I put this out there in the world, most people had no idea what mental strength was, how to build it, what to do about it. And people needed to know, okay, sometimes it's not about adding more stuff to your to-do list. It's about subtracting a few things. Yeah. And of course, this was all pre-pandemic. And with the pandemic, I'm finding people want mental strength now more than ever.
Yeah. I'm seeing that. And when I do want to talk about the other book you've sent me, What Parents Don't Do. And I want to talk about the impact of the pandemic on both us as well as the kids. That's where my focus is a lot. But anyway, let's focus. But prior to the break, I said, let's pick a couple of these things that you find are more common struggles with people in leadership and business positions. So there are 13 of them. Pick one, if you would, and let's discuss it.
Let's go with number 4, that mentally strong people don't focus on things they can't control.
Okay. Tell me more about that. I'm all in.
So this one is really about identifying, well, what is within my control and what isn't. And sometimes just separating those two things makes a big difference. So, for example, we can, of course, control how we think, how we feel, and how we behave, but we can't control other people. And I'll see a lot of people who are just really angry and upset and frustrated because their partner doesn't act in a certain way. Their employee, their colleague, somebody else in the office isn't doing the things they want to do. So they become manipulative, or they say, I'm going to either praise really good behavior in order to get this person to act more the way that I want, or I'm going to spread gossip about them in a way that hurts them. We go through all of these lengths sometimes to try to change other people rather than just having an upfront conversation with them. And to just recognize, okay, well, you can maybe create a great product, but you can't control who buys it, or you can't control government policies. You can't control the economy. You can't control something like if the pandemic's going to happen.
Yeah.
But if we just put our energy, we only have so much mental real estate, so much effort, so much energy. If we just put it in the right places, we can make a big difference. But it's so tempting sometimes to get lost in everything else going around that we end up wasting a lot of that energy on things that we can't control.
Now, the contrarian in me says, but that's the job of the leader, is to control these types of things, is to get an influence there, is to change the behavior of the team or the individuals to create a better team. It's the job of the leader to try to predict where the market's going to be, to create the product or the service that's going to be what that customer wants. You're saying you can't control that. Part of me says, but that's the job that that some people have been hired to do.
And that's a good point. And you can't control people. You can certainly help motivate them, inspire them, give them incentives, help them to become their best. But to know that at the end of the day, if somebody falls short, it's not necessarily your fault. Obviously, we want you to take accountability and personal responsibility if you didn't give people the tools and skills that they need to do their best. But on the other hand, to know that you can't force somebody to behave a certain way. And it's definitely wise to say, okay, what are the predictions? What's going to happen next year at this time in terms of the economy and the markets? But to know that all the preparation in the world won't necessarily mean that you're going to nail it head on. You may not be able to control those external factors. And just letting go of some of that to know, okay, well, if the worst happens, if things don't go the way I'm predicting, what can we do about this? And it's smart to have a plan. It's just not wise to put all your effort into thinking you're going to prevent the storm from coming.
I find that this is one of those life paradoxes of the more you let go of control, the more control you'll get. The more you let go of your desire to influence every outcome, the more influence you usually get. It's almost theological, and it's one of these great paradoxes of our desire to control limits our ability of what we control. Does that make sense?
It does. There's so much research behind that when we are anxious, we try to control everything. The more we try to control, the more anxious we get. Creates it's like a snowball rolling down a hill that just gets bigger and bigger. And sometimes it's then just about knowing, okay, I'm going to control my emotions today. I'm going to control how I think. I'm going to control how I behave. And that can influence other people, but you don't need to control them. And I find that the people who struggle the most to, say, tolerate an uncomfortable feeling like anxiety, they're the ones that become the control freaks, because they think, okay, if I can't control how I feel, I'm going to control everything around me. And they become the people that micromanage. They become angry, bitter about other people's actions. And the more that they do that, the less control they have over their own emotional state. So absolutely. And if we can just take back that desire to control everything and think, nope, I'm just going to make sure that I'm managing my emotional state, makes a huge difference.
You mentioned bitter about other people's actions. One of the things that I highlighted in your book was about envy. And I've never heard the difference described between jealousy and resentment. And this leapt out to me. Now, before I read it, the show that I recorded most recently for this radio show is a guy that has had a extraordinary business year last year in the midst of the pandemic and this year. I mean, he's killing it. And it's just it's not anything he ever could have predicted. But when they said to everybody that you've got to quarantine, well, he has a property company with beach houses. And people said, if I'm going to quarantine, I'm going to quarantine at the beach. And suddenly his reservations exploded. His price per night went up. The point is, he's done really well through no fault of his own. He was positioned to do well. The pandemic has really helped him. He's in a good position, and you can hear it in his voice. And the reason I take pains to articulate this is there are people listening right now who the quarantine and the pandemic has hurt bad, and they're struggling to keep the doors open, and they're cutting down their spending at home, if not eliminated a lot of it. So this pandemic seems to have made heroes out of some and really caused others to suffer. And then we get into this definition here. Here we go. While jealousy can be described as I want what you have, resentment over someone else's success goes further. It's I want what you have, and I don't want you to have it. Resentment versus jealousy. It's a distinction I had not seen before. And I'm curious if you're seeing this play out in our time right now. And again, keeping in mind my audience are largely business people in the business community.
I am, right down to, certain companies or individuals who are able to get loans that were forgiven, and people saying that's not fair, you didn't deserve it, and I did, to certain businesses that are allowed to be open in some states and not others, and people just saying, you shouldn't have that either, or I'm gonna, somebody's breaking some sort of regulation, and they say, that's. Not only am I angry that you're putting people's health at risk, but I'm angry that you're able to earn money. And it comes down to resenting that other people seem to be more successful, or that's not fair. And a lot of this was sort of the roll of the dice. Nobody knew what was going to happen. We couldn't have predicted the pandemic and the ups and the downs and all the uncertainties and how life has evolved. But there certainly are people who are taking their struggles and not just dealing with their own struggles, but they're looking around thinking, that's not fair that other people are thriving right now and they shouldn't have that. And because of that, they're growing angry and bitter about it.
And your advice is, hey, this is random. You just got to let it go. You got to, and you mentioned this previously, control your emotions, and you're allowing your emotions get in front of you. And one of the things that I highlighted on a couple pages later is you stop focusing on your own path to success when you become resentful. All your energy begins to focus on what's not fair about this situation versus looking at your own path and saying, let's drop that. Because when I think that way, I absolutely immobilize myself. Yes?
Definitely. I've seen so many people who, instead of focusing on what can I do to pivot right now, how do I make my business better, they're looking around at other people saying, well, their business shouldn't be thriving. And they're wasting tons of time and energy thinking about that other company and what they're doing and how they don't deserve it. And instead of just putting their effort into where it matters the most, which is on their own goals.
Curiously, Amy, if there's a question that you've received from patients, your clients, however you describe them, that if you could, you would roll your eyes and say, I can't believe I'm having to deal with this issue again. It's what I hear all day, every day. This is not, it's like a parent bringing their infant child in with a cold, first parent and the pediatrician having to act concerned and helpful, but the pediatrician's thinking, here we go. And again, it's another baby with a cold. These parents just think theirs is different, that their baby is unique, that this is a bigger issue. Is there a similar issue that you're brought to on a regular basis that is more common than others from your clients?
So there's an issue, I guess, that I get why people do it. And if I wasn't a therapist, there's probably times in my life where I would have been tempted to do the exact same thing. It's people who don't want to, say, confront somebody in their own life. It might be a partner. It might be a mother-in-law. And so instead of just directly saying to that person, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's going on with me, they'll say, can I bring that person into your therapy office and you tell them, or can you write them a letter that says, your drinking is an issue, or right. I don't like it when you criticize me, because they don't dare have that conversation themselves. So they want me to have that for them, or for me to, I guess, lecture the other person about how they need to change their behavior.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Of course, in my work, then I just work on empowering that person to do that themselves.
They want to hire you to fix the other person.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Funny stuff. All right. When we come back from break, I want to talk to you a little bit about drama. We had a guest on the show not long ago, a former Navy SEAL, retired Navy SEAL, and he talked about drama, and I'll explain that a little bit more. And then let's talk quickly about the things that mentally strong parents don't do. My listeners, 45 years old and older, generally, they're in that category. I'm curious what that would be. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. On the line with me is Amy Morin. We're talking about mental strength, and we'll be right back.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stella's. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
It's Cam again. Each Friday, my 3-minute commentaries called Keeping It Real are broadcast on Alabama Public Radio at 7:45 a.m. and 4:45 p.m. For 3 years, I've shared my thoughts and insights on the world and on life as I watch it go on around me. They've won a few statewide and national awards, and I really enjoy them. My goal for the commentaries? I simply want them to make you nod at something that you recognize, or smile, or maybe chuckle to yourself. Our world faces a shortage of good intentions these days, and my Keeping It Real commentaries are my effort to help fill this void. Search for Keeping It Real with Cam Marston in your Facebook search bar or on your favorite podcast app, and I hope you enjoy them.
Think about your home. What do you see? Do you just see 2 stories, or the stories of your toddler's first steps? Now think about your car. Do you see an odometer reading, or your kids reading in the back seat? Other insurance companies just see a house. They just see a car. But a State Farm agent sees what your home and your car really mean to you. So why not give them the protection they deserve?
You can reach me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, at AllisonHorner.com.
Amy Morin has been described by The Guardian as the self-help guru of the moment. Forbes called her a thought leadership star. And Inc. magazine named Amy one of the top 100 leadership speakers of 2018. Superlatives that are well-deserved. Amy, in a previous show, we had retired Navy SEAL Tom Shea on. He now is a trainer for executives, and he has asked over 400 people, what is the one thing that prevents you from being the best form of yourself? And their response by huge numbers was drama. Drama in my life, they said, prevents me from being the best version of myself. Drama with my team, drama with my employees, drama with my spouse, drama with my kids. Drama, a very nebulous term. When you hear that, what do you think? And what would you tell this executive to get rid of this drama?
I think drama usually comes from our assumptions rather than the facts. So when we try to connect the dots when we don't have them. So if somebody is chronically late for work, we might decide that person is lazy. Or when somebody speaks up too much in a meeting, we might think, well, that person's narcissistic and they have to get attention. So, but rather than addressing the problem head on, sometimes we complain about it. We talk to other people about it. We roll our eyes and don't do anything about it. So to get rid of drama, the best thing to do is to just confront it head on and say, this is what I'm noticing, and then get the information that you need. You might find that employee who is chronically late has several kids at home and they're trying to get out the door on time. They might just need to have a conversation about what can you do instead. Or maybe you have somebody that has a sleep issue, or they have a spouse who's sick and they're trying to take care of them in the morning. You don't know, but we make these assumptions. Or the person who talks a lot in meetings, maybe they're uncomfortable with silence. So the second that things are silent, they speak up. So a conversation with them just to point out that behavior might help them become more self-aware of, oh, I talk too much. So I think just figuring out that our assumptions aren't always true and we can go straight to the source to get the information can be really helpful.
Drama is a function of assumptions, essentially. And once we confront those assumptions, maybe the drama disappears. The title of the book that I'm holding now, 13 Things Mentally Strong Parents Don't Do. As you and I said in an email exchange, I'm hoping my children aren't irreversibly damaged, that they are, they have some elasticity of character and personality, perhaps, that can absolve them some or fix them from the parenting styles that I've used so much. But one of the things that you say that I want to talk about in the parenting component is in the introduction. You talk about core beliefs. Where do core beliefs come from? First, what are they? Then where do they come from?
So we all have these certain core beliefs about ourselves, other people, and the world in general. And as parents, we have a great opportunity to shape our kids' beliefs. Do they believe that they're a capable, competent kid? Do they believe that other people are inherently good and kind of safe? Or do they think everybody in the world's out to get them? And then about the world, do they think, okay, the world's going to hold you back, you can't possibly succeed in life? Or do they think, gosh, I have this big, bright future ahead of me, I can do anything I want? And it's really subtle things sometimes that instill these beliefs in kids. When we send messages based on the way that we behave or the things that we model. If you come home from work every day saying, you know, the average person can't get ahead in life, or it's not fair, we have to spend so much money in taxes that we can't afford anything, their kids are going to adopt some beliefs that, yeah, the world's a rough place and I can't ever succeed. Or the little messages we give them about themselves, of when they're going to try out for the basketball team or when they fail a test, how do we respond? Teaches them a lot. It really shapes their core beliefs. And as they grow up, those will really play out what they believe about themselves, other people, and the world in general. One of the phenomenon I see in my study on the demographic trends is how much the parenting influences shape that child for the rest of their lives. Right now, we have these trends that are somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but you can see them play out. Parenting trends of bubble wrap parents, of snowplow parents, of bulldozer parents, parenting styles that the parents with their best intentions are trying to flatten the path, iron out the rough spots for their kids to make it easier for them. And one of the things that I highlighted in this book is too much adult intervention fuels a victim mentality. And I found that amazing. That is, the parents are trying to do so much, what they're actually creating is a victim mentality in their child. Can you comment on that? Yeah, as you say, back in the father knows best era, we had parents that were telling kids you should be seen and not heard. And then the pendulum swung the other way. You know, the next generation decided, okay, we're going to be helicopter parents and really hover over our kids. And then somehow we went even further. And now we're like, let's make sure my kid never fails. Let's make sure that they always make the team. Everybody gets a trophy. And sadly, when kids don't have those experiences, they don't ever get to face natural consequences of their mistakes, when they don't ever have to know what it's like to struggle, then they aren't prepared for the realities of life. And I teach college classes and I see this firsthand. And I'm not surprised by this study. There's a study that asked college kids, were you prepared for school after high school? And like 90% of them said I was academically prepared for college, but yet almost that many of them also said I wasn't emotionally prepared. I don't know how to deal with sadness. I don't know how to deal with anxiety. I don't know how to deal with an argument with my roommate, because they've never had to deal with that stuff growing up.
Yeah, amazing. Here again is another paradox. The more the parents try to do to help their child, the less actually they're helping the kid. And one of the things that I want to that really got to me in this book on parenting, Amy, that really perhaps is the biggest favor anybody's done for me this year, was the difference between punishment and discipline. This is page 260 of the book. Finding consequences that teach opposed to consequences that punish is tricky sometimes. And punishment is about, if I understood it correctly, is about what's happened. Discipline is about what will happen. It's future focused versus background focused. Would you comment on that, please?
Right. So this one is really about knowing that, all right, the kids are going to mess up and that's great. And they need consequences for that. But the kind of consequences we give them is going to make a huge difference about how they feel about themselves. And so, you know, if your child does something at home, they maybe talk back to you, and you say, okay, I'm going to ground you for the rest of the week, and you take away everything they have, versus saying, you know, what else could you do with your time? How else do we talk back when you're frustrated? What can we do instead? And make sure that you're teaching and guiding them. And they still need a consequence. Maybe you take away their favorite toy for the day, something like that, for being disrespectful, but to just make sure that the consequences we're giving them are tied to the misbehavior. If your kid rides their bike out of bounds, you take their bike away. But so often what we do is we think that we need to really punish them in order to make them learn. And I've had a lot of parents come into my therapy office as sort of this tongue in cheek, like, well, wouldn't want to ruin his self-esteem kind of attitude, being sarcastic. But the truth is, if you put your kids down and punish them to the point that they don't feel good about themselves, they're not going to make good choices. And so I always ask parents, when your kid is 14 and somebody that offers them marijuana, who's going to say no? The kid who feels good about themselves, or the kid who thinks I'm an idiot and I can't do anything right? Because that's what my parents have always taught me. And ultimately, we know we want the kid who says, yeah, I made a bad choice, not I'm a bad person. When kids know, okay, I made a bad choice when I cheated on that test, but I'm still a good kid. Here's what else I have going on in life. They'll make better choices in the future. So we just want to make sure that kids know, all right, we all make mistakes, and here's how I learn from it, and here's how I move forward.
Punishment is about inflicting a penalty that causes suffering, is what you've written. Punishments focus on the mistake. They serve to make the child feel bad about his wrongdoing. Discipline, on the other hand, teaches him to do better next time. And that was a palm to the forehead moment for me. Additionally, and maybe I made this up, maybe it's in the book, punishment is often generated out of the emotional distress of the parent. It's a knee-jerk reaction of, oh, you'll suffer for that, versus discipline, which is thought out and much more controlled. And I really, Amy, thank you for that. That was very helpful to me. As my listeners know, we have 4 teenage children, and we're in the thick of it right now. And anything that can help us is welcome. I'm wondering, though, Amy, if there's something on the future you've written about for women, you've written for parents. Are you going to the kids themselves? Do you have something in the works for the kids themselves?
I do. So that's actually my next book, is 13 Things Strong Kids Do. It comes out April 6th, and it targets the 8 to 12-year-old range. It's about giving them a tool to empower them, because it's one thing for the parenting book teaches parents what to do, and there's exercises you can do with your kids. But I really wanted to give kids a tool so that they can say, all right, I have this book, here's some knowledge. Here's how I apply it. And now I'm going to get out there and do it.
Yeah, that's great. I noticed that you've moved away from the signature "don't" in the title of this next book.
Yes, my 11-year-old niece said, Amy, kids are already told what not to do enough in life. You need to write one about what to do. And I took that advice very seriously.
No kidding. It's nice to hear that an 11-year-old can find space in your expert brain to make a point. That's awesome. Go, girl.
That's right. But my hope is, too, that if kids grow up doing these certain good habits, they won't grow up to develop the bad habits that some of us adults have.
Amy, I know you have podcasts, you have articles, you have blogs. Take a moment to tell people where they can find more of your content.
So you can find me at my website, which is Amy Morin, LCSW, as in licensed clinical social worker.com.
And there, your podcast is downloaded by twice the number of people that are on planet Earth. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Yes,
that's about right. And it's good stuff. It's called The Friday. What's the title? The Friday. So
it's called Mentally Strong People, but we do a special episode on Fridays called The Friday Fix, which is just a quick mental strength exercise.
The Friday Fix. Very good. Good for you, Amy. And it's a delight to know you. I'm proud to say I know you. Thank you so much for your time on the show today. I know you've helped people. Folks, I have marked her books up cover to cover. It's full of content. And Amy, I want to compliment you on the writing. I know you're a good writer, and I know you know that. But it's so easy to digest, and it's really very palatable, this stuff. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Cam. I appreciate it.
Folks, we'll be back after this final break with final comments. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Now offering the purchase of the Stella Artois Chalice, a beautiful stemmed glass with the Stella logo. The purchase of each Stella Artois Chalice provides 5 years of clean water for someone in one of 13 developing countries around the world. Learn more at stellaartois.com. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
At Spring Hill Toyota, it's just that easy. From our 3-day exchange to free car washes, the benefits of the Spring Hill Advantage make the choice easy to see. We make it easy to own. Every vehicle comes with Toyota Care, plus our no-cost maintenance plan with free tire rotations and oil changes for 4 years. Get peace of mind with free roadside assistance 24/7. And don't forget, it's easy to buy your car 100% online. Visit SpringHillToyota.com today. It's just that easy.
Hey, this is Cam. Thanks for listening, and I hope you're really enjoying the podcast. Do me a favor and search for Cam Marston on your social media outlets and like us or follow us or whatever is the right thing to do. Also, if you know others who'd benefit from the podcast, please forward it on to them and encourage them to listen. If you're so inclined, we'd love your rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Those ratings matter. Finally, don't be a stranger. Email me with your comments, your feedback, your thoughts, your show ideas, whatever. Cam, C-A-M, at cammarston.com. I'd love to hear from you. Again, thank you very much for listening. Now, back to the show. We all know this, but the expression, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, is not true. You can teach old dogs new tricks. And specifically, I'm talking about you and me and our ability to think about things and how we think about things and how to get rid of the drama and how to contain our jealousy and our resentment and how to parent our children differently and all these things that I think in the past people had thought they're set, he's cooked, he's fixed, it's cast in stone, this is the way it's going to be. Science continues to prove that that's not true. Our brains have what's called elasticity, and we can relearn, and it rewires our brains, the neurons or whatever it may be, connect in different ways. The point being, you may say to yourself, I've kind of got a habit of this. I've got a history of behaving this way and thinking this way. Amy is going to tell you that that's not true. It is a habit. It's not a fixture. And you can teach you're an old dog, and you can learn some new tricks. I think the key is wanting to do so. and to realize that the behaviors that you have right now aren't serving you very well. Lay down that burden, as the expression goes. It's not serving you very well. So Amy offers these great pieces of advice. And I think the pickup from her content has been so strong. It's a reflection of how badly it's needed. One of the things that we do know, that everybody knows, you don't need to be a licensed practicing clinician to know this, is that one of the causes of stress and anxiety and worry in our world is often financially driven. And like I said during the show, there's a lot of people who are doing very well financially, but there are plenty of others that are suffering. One of the things that my buddies at Sandifer Wealth Management offer is a help with you understanding your own finances and preparing for your future. These guys are certified financial planners, which means they're some of the best of the best. And one of the great things they have in their background is experience. Since 1982, they've been around. They work with you on your taxes and they treat you well. Their focus is you and the outcome, not them and their billing, but you and their outcome. It's called a fiduciary. And if you want to talk to Jamie or Mark, give them a call at 340-1984 or find them at sandiferwealth.com. We're going to finish today with a commentary that I did a couple of weeks ago, ironically, on fixing people. Enjoy, everybody. Have a good week.
On this week's Keeping It Real, Cam Marston recounts a call with a client who needed Cam to come lead a seminar designed to fix her team.
Here's a summary of a client call I had the other day. Cam, the woman said, my employees aren't grateful enough for what I do for them. And my new hires expect to be put into leadership positions within a year of being hired. And if they don't get promoted, they quit. When I correct them on anything, their reply is that the mistake is not their fault. It's that they weren't trained properly. Cam, she said, I need you to come and lead a workshop that will teach my people how good they have it, especially compared to the types of jobs I had when I was their age. I need you to come in and, well, fix them. The amount of time I spend getting paid by my clients to try to fix their people is shocking. It's extraordinary the amount of effort that we spend trying to fix other people. And the reason we're trying to fix other people is always the same: to make our own lives easier. I have it all figured out, we say. It's the other person. It's my team, it's my spouse, it's my colleague who needs the help. Fix them, or teach me how to fix them. Well, here's some insight I've gained in my half-century of living. It's hard. It's very hard to fix people, especially if they don't want to be fixed or they don't think they need to be fixed. You can only fix yourself. And believe it or not, it's much easier and, frankly, it's much more fulfilling. Fixing people is akin to grooming talent. If the talent isn't interested in being groomed, you're wasting your time. Parents like me are the worst. We spot a glimmer of talent in a child, and we throw our kids into lessons. We hire coaches, we hire special tutors, on and on. The remnants are everywhere. Not far from where I sit right now is an electronic keyboard and an electronic drum set that remain untouched by a child who showed some budding musical talent. We recently sold another child's youth golf clubs that were never used. He made a perfect golf swing in the front yard a few years back, and we signed him up for lessons and bought him clubs. He wanted none of it. There are roller skates in the bottom of a closet, sitting on stacks of instructional books on how to draw. This detritus reflects my wife and my excitement, not our children's. I love this following quote. You'll be okay with the world once you realize that the world is okay. There are variations of it throughout history and across all religions. And when I read it, or when I remember to think about it, I worry much, much less about fixing people and learn to be okay with things as they are and with people as they are. And if there's anything that I should go to work fixing that I can control, it's me. I'm Cam Marston, and I'm just trying to keep it real.
To hear more of Cam Marston's commentaries, search for Keeping It Real on your favorite podcast app or find them on Facebook.